They will burn your skin like an iron. And right while I'm here and the power is on in the airplane, I flip the stall warning switch up. This stall warning switch is pushed up by the wind if the airplane gets to an angle of attack that is too high. And should be hearing a beep in there if the power was on. Each time I pull it up. And I'm checking the landing lights, taxi lights. These two lights at the nose should be on if power was on. Then I run back inside the airplane and shut off all the power after looking at fuel gauges. Fuel gauges and any other instruments or radios that should be working right now. Like the turn coordinator, you might be able to hear its gyroscope spinning. And then I turn master switch it back off, battery master back off. Starting again where I was, looking at the speed brakes. These used to be able to be pulled up manually on some airplanes. It says only electrical operation on this one now. And I continue back around the airplane in the direction I was going, looking for any damage or any kind of defects. I look in the fuel tanks to make sure the fuel indicates what the gauges said, operating these levers and turning the lock to unlock the cap. Look inside, it looks like it's almost empty in this case. And make sure that when you put those back on, that you lock it again and push down the lock to be flush with the wind, and the wind would keep it down. This is another fuel cap for another tank and a quantity gauge also. It's a good idea to check those against your gauges, your fuel gauges. Looking out here at anything else that can be investigated here. This is a door that is not in use anymore because of the STC, the Supplemental Type Certificate that was installed on this airplane. A bigger engine was installed. And you can look in there, but really you're only looking for anything like bird nests or any kind of problems. Coming around, looking at the cowl flaps, and I shake them to make sure they're not too sloppy. Sometimes they do get sloppy. The rivets get worn. I'm looking inside the cowling for any bird nests or any other types of discrepancies, things that might not look normal. And I look at the propeller blades. The leading edge of this blade is a little rough, not bad. And the boot, the heating element to keep the ice off the blade, is in good condition. Same thing for all the other blades. And the spinner here and the spinner bulkhead, sometimes those get broken from wind and from vibration. Looking at the other blade and its leading edge boot, its heating element to keep the ice off, propeller de-ice. I don't have a screwdriver with me, or do I? Yes, I do. To look at engine oil. Open the cowling. And look inside. You can see the magneto there. And the engine oil cap. Normally, because the engine has not been run, the oil should be down low on the dipstick and not have to be wiped. It is reading, approximately, and I cannot really see the number on the camera, but it looks like 11 quarts. 12 quarts is maximum. And you don't want to fill it up to be any more than 1 quart below maximum, because the last quart, the 12th quart, will normally get blown out of the breather, crankcase breather, and lets blow by coming from the piston rings go into the crankcase. And that blow by blowing past the piston rings is what blows the excess oil out. And it ends up going back down to 11 quarts anyway. The OAT, outside air temperature probe, looks like it's in good shape and steady. I mean, it's stiff. The other fuel tanks that we check inside, again, we've already checked the stall warning switch. and the leading edge stall strip here. I'll explain those later. The pitot tube we checked, and the pitot heat was operational. Let's say we did not actually turn power on, and check the lights and the aileron, and the control yoke is moving as I move the aileron, and the static discharge wicks are in place. The hinges are in place. Bolts, and the other flap is also down. Both flaps operate as one unit. And we're back here at the fuselage, the empennage part of the fuselage. Here is a static port, little tiny pinhole on both sides of this particular airplane. And make sure that that port is open. I'll explain that static port in just a second. And the cooling vent for the empennage is not clogged with debris or birds. This horizontal stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer, as well as the rudder and the elevators, all should be moved. However, the rudder in this case has a sign on it that says no push, because it's tied into the nose wheel steering, and we don't want to force any kind of springs or connections. I'm looking again at hinge pins on the elevator, static discharge wicks on the elevator, and the same thing on the rudder, hinge pins, wicks. And I am moving it just a little bit, but only to get a feel of what the rudder feels like, what those hinges feel like. Wicks and light we already checked, and the antenna for communications and navigation, and the bolt for the rudder operation. The only rudder trim and the only pitch trim is the actual movement of the whole on this airplane, and the ground power, oxygen hookup. Ground power uses the same shape item, and the baggage door. And we're gonna go on and jump in the car and get out of here.